obviously we're focused on bigger things, but as you're going through this journey, you have to qualify for the playoffs before you can do anything else. Clinch a spot with 9 games remaining. Obviously, with that being the case, you've done some good things along the way to put ourselves in that position. So we acknowledge that, and then we moved on to the bigger things.
I wonder if one of those bigger things is trying to get Sergei Samsonov out of retirement to come play for the Leafs in the playoffs.
He's over 70 points twice in his career in the NHL, so I think it'd be
That's
great.
what I was talking about. Right?
Help the Oilers go to the Cup Finals.
Trying to get Sergei Samsonov in here. That was Sheldon Keefe. He was talking about the playoffs and how they're kind of focusing now. Their sole focus is on bigger things, which I think he means the Stanley Cup. And
not Matt Murray versus.
I love how I said when I put Leafs and Stanley Cup together, you start smirking. What is it? Just say it.
What? It's just
there.
Look. Make it past the first round. There should be no talk.
That's probably
about
the
the Stanley Cup unless you get past the first round. Once you get, because I think once the Leafs get over that first round hump, then they can go in a deep
I know,
run.
but then it's like, okay, let's say they get past the first round and they get completely embarrassed in the second round. Then where are you at with
we can talk about Stanley Cup journeys, or we can talk about backup goaltenders, or what's the best third line combination.
Where will
what
Ryan
do you
O'Reilly
want to talk
and
about?
we will talk
Justin?
about one of
we
those
will,
things.
all
actually.
those things.
The Leafs in action today against the Florida Panthers. The Panthers battling for their life to get into the playoffs, coming off a rough loss against the Ottawa Senators. The Panthers, listen to this, 1-9 in their last 10 meetings in Toronto. So it's not good. It bodes well for Toronto, not the Panthers. Sheldon Keefe had this to say, and I found this very interesting, talking about goalies on home road splits for Samsonov and Murray. We've been talking about this for weeks now. I mean, who should be the number one, yada, yada, yada. He said, it's something that we're looking at for sure. I don't know how applicable it might be beyond the regular season. You get into the playoffs, everything kind of equalizes. It's certainly something that has my attention. I'm not sure if I agree with that it equalizes in the playoffs.
I think,
if anything, it enhances.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think from those comments, he's going to go with the number one for game one. And if it works out, that goaltender, whoever it is, will be his number one. I don't think he's trying to push away the fact that they might flip-flop in the playoffs, even though maybe they should. I mean, listen, the splits are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? But I think when it comes down to it, if Murray's healthy, if he's playing well, or vice versa, he'll go with one guy and ride him as long as he can.
It's that time of year. April is now upon us where NHL coaches are going to say less and less and less because they don't want to give any edge away, right? Now the Leafs are locked in. I think Sheldon Keefe's going to start playing the media and using that to his advantage and kind of teasing, I might go this way with goaltending, I might go this way with goaltending, try to get that competitive edge.
But does that give Tampa a competitive edge if he names either
No, it
goalie?
gives Toronto a competitive edge because it keeps Tampa guessing on who they think is going to be in the net. That's what I'm trying to...
Which mediocre goaltender are they facing?
Yeah, exactly. Which media?
Essentially, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or is it Joseph Wall?
Or is it Joseph Wall? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Listen,
playing well.
if one of these guys goes down to the playoffs, that's the next guy in.
Right?
I think when you look at these two teams, Tampa and Toronto, the one area we know where there's a huge edge for Tampa is in goal.
They have
Right,
that
so-
edge, I think, over almost every single team in the NHL, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yes. It's not against Murray or Samsonov. It's about Vasilevsky being so good. So, is it mind games? I don't know, but maybe just planting some little seed into the forwards of Tampa. You don't know who you're going to face.
I'm really interested to see the second last game of the season. It's the Leafs against Tampa. How that's going to play out. Resting players,
Will it be a
sending a
bruising affair
message.
or just a pathetic.
I think it's going to be a
non-contact.
pathetic preseason type atmosphere.
You think so?
I don't. Why risk it? Both these teams are pretty much locked into where they are right now. By that, I'm sure the Lightning will have clinched the third spot in the Atlantic Division.
Right.
What's going to be the use of trotting out, and unless they really want to have a measuring stick game before the playoffs, but then you're risking the chance of somebody getting hurt. I see a lot of the big guys taking the night off or just taking it easy.
Although it takes one Michael Bunting cross check or something. It won't take much to fire them up.
Yeah. And
Right.
there are
Either
players
way.
still kind of playing for their spots.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for
that
sure.
could be a game where we see Matthew Nyes. I mean, he hasn't been great. I think he hasn't scored in like 13 games. He's kind of coming off battling some sort of injury, but that's probably a game where Matthew Nyes is going to want to come in. Hey, listen, I need to show my worth to be a part of the playoffs, be a part of that roster. It could be that.
I don't think you rest players on the second game before the playoffs. You want them to have some kind of
I know.
momentum as well.
It's funny. Bruce Boudreau was talking about that. He was asked about load management in hockey. He goes, if it's me personally, because he used to play, he goes, I want to play every single game. So you have to think that the rest of top NHLers feel the exact same way.
Yeah, but load management goes beyond the how the player feels. It's all about data and what is their threshold for injury. They haven't got to say. It's like, oh, sorry, Willie Nylander, you're here on our threshold of injury potential. He hasn't got. It's not subjective. It's black and white.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole thing with you go back to load management is players want to play. Whatever, whenever you talk about load management, players always get the brunt of, the the blame for it, but it's the organizations that determine, okay, we want you to sit, we want to, protect our asset. And I think, again, at this time of year, though, especially in hockey, you want to be playing your best hockey going into the playoffs, right? I know a lot of people say momentum's not a real thing in sports. It is a real thing in sports. You want to be playing well.
It is a real thing. People say that it is.
Absolutely, it is a real thing. But I think you want to have your guys going, right? You want to have them playing their best hockey. You don't want them to have that rust build up because, like we've said, every time we talk with the Leafs, that game one, it's going to be at Scotiabank Arena. That game one, that first period, that's going to be setting the tone, right? All the planning and all of that. What did Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, the Leafs are either going to punch Tampa in the face in the first period of that first round series, or they're going to get punched in the face. And how are each team going to respond after that? That's the biggest thing.
You're dropping some gems today, bringing the heat. I love that. Speaking of rust, there could be some rust on Ryan O'Reilly. He might come back this week, but Keefe is hoping next week is the time for him. Here's Sheldon Keefe on Ryan O'Reilly.
Just to continue to ramp him up and make sure that things respond positively, both as he's shooting more, handling pucks more, and then also just making sure that he's safe in terms of minimizing risk for re-injury. So that's really it. Today, obviously, he didn't practice. He did everything but practice, and he got a lot of work individually himself before we even got out there. And then, the hope is that he'll continue to progress towards practice here. I would call him unlikely to play this week, but that hasn't been ruled out necessarily. But I think the plan is more to kind of ramp him up through this week and look more towards next.
That's a really good sign for the Toronto Maple Leafs and Ryan O'Reilly. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and these are the conversations we're going to have, where certain players should line up. But the more and more that I think about it, it really should be Ryan O'Reilly on the third line. I think depth down the middle is so important in the playoffs. It's so key. And I'm like, the Leafs have enough scorers on their team. You have Matthews, you have Marner, you have Nylander, Tavares can jump in. Yarncroke now we see can score goals. Kerfoot is in the back of that. Bunting can score goals. Why not just strengthen down the middle? So I'm saying right now, come playoff time, he's got to be that third line center, James.
With who, though? I mean, is it checking line?
Probably, right? You throw in with Lafferty and maybe Bunting or Kerfoot with him.
I just think it's a bit irrelevant, and I think you're going to see Keefe mash his lines up a fair bit, depending whether they're at home or on the road as well. But I mean, I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. Strength down the middle, as they say, is so important in hockey, especially in the playoffs. And how does Tampa match up when you have that strength on your third pairing? Third line.
Every line you put out there's a solid line.
Really strong. Yeah. At the same time, I like what I saw with Tavares on the wing and O'Reilly in the center as well. It worked really well, and Tavares can't be trusted defensively at this point in his career.
And it might not be a bad thing to have Tavares and O'Reilly on the same line because both can take faceoffs, defensive. You know how big defensive zone faceoffs are in hockey, especially in the playoffs, whether it's an icing call. And to have that flexibility to have people who take, whether it's Tavares' strong side or O'Reilly's strong side, that flexibility as well might be a positive too. But I think I do agree with you about having the three strong centers down the middle because O'Reilly, he's not the offensive guy he was before in St. Louis, right? He's a bit more of a checker, a bit more of that grinding type of guy. He's more of a depth piece for this team. I would love to see him match up on a the traditional checking line that goes up against, Tampa or Boston's top line and really, do a number on them like that and play heavy minutes like that and really make those star players, tired and beat on them, wear on them. So I think that might be the best situation. But like James did allude to, Sheldon Keefe is known for juggling his lines, so I think we will expect a bit of both.
Okay, quickly, fill in the blank, James. The Maple Leafs will have playoff success if they blank.
Ooh, playoff success if they advance to the second round and go deep against Boston. And I know it's pathetic. It is pathetic, right? Second round, but it'll be a stepping stone. It'd be a shot in the right direction compared to what we've seen for the previous 7 years, don't forget.
If their depth pieces step up.
Right. I think it's goaltending. If they get timely goaltending, really good goaltending, I think they'll go deep in this playoffs. Who cares about the defense? Who cares about the forwards? They need the goaltenders to step up.
So what's a successful playoff run for you?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Well, first round for sure. I even think you got to get to the conference finals. I think the Leafs are that good.
Even with Boston being where they are this year?
Yes, I think that would be a really successful playoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they get to Game 7 with Boston in the second round, if Boston's even in the second round.
Let me rephrase that. It's acceptable to get to the second round and lose to Boston. It's not successful. Okay, let's go with that. Okay.
It's okay.
Who knows, man? Leafs, just figure it out, all right?